Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about value and talk about value as it applies to knives. And so there's a difference between a good value and a bargain. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the upcoming video, but I also want to share with you some of the ways that I evaluate knives to figure out, what is a good value in a knife. And I think that's something that whether you're a veteran knife collector or just starting out, it can be kind of confusing. So I'm just going to go through some of the things that I go through normally when I'm picking knives out, how I choose them, and how I determine what is a good value. So if you'd like to hear more about that, go ahead and check out the video. All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. Bonjour, privet, guten tag, hola, ciao, konnichiwa, and good day, mate, to my foreign viewers. And today we're going to be talking about value and how to choose that, how to decide that in knives. But before we do that, I'd like to mention that next Tuesday, June 2nd, at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm having a live show. Steven from Patty's Potato Pillar will be there. Jesse McJames will be there. Randy's WSG is going to grace our presence by being there also. It's a fun-filled, crazy cast, and I hope we're going to have a good time. But we're going to be talking about hatchets, and particularly Jesse has a really good background in vintage hatchets. He'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about, how to use them. Are they useful? Do people use them? What are some of the alternatives to using hatchets in the field? How to sharpen them? What are some of the best ways? What are the different ways that each of us do it? And so it should be a pretty interesting and informative show for you. I hope that you'll check it out. So, let's go ahead and talk about this value equation. So let's start with a definition first. And so when we talk about value, what does that mean? And we humans assign, elevate things to a higher position of importance. And that is something that we value as human beings. And so there's a lot of different definitions that surround that value definition, but the one we're primarily interested in when we talk about knives and how I define that term and what I'm talking about when I talk about a valuation or a high value knife, I'm talking about the cost of the knife in relation to the worth that we put on that knife, or usefulness that we put on that knife. And that's a totally different thing than, say, a bargain. So if you were to go to buy this knife, and normally they sell for $50 and you could get it for $43, well, that's a bargain. And that's a cost savings to us, and pretty important. But that's not really what I'm talking about. And when we talk about value, cost is included in that. And so we do consider the cost of something when we consider the value of it. But really what I'm talking about is the cost in relation to the long-term worth of this knife to you. Is it going to hold up? Is it rugged? Is it durable? Is the cost associated with this knife in comparison to the materials that this knife uses, is that a good value for you? And that's what we're really talking about. And that's where you get a big bang for your buck, much bigger than a bargain, a little bit of money off on a knife. And so we're going to go through and talk about how you come up with a good valuation on knives. So the first thing you need to understand before we start talking about this is valuation is very much like beauty, and so beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and so is valuation. You know what I mean by that? Well, take this knife right here. This is a buck 110. Old pattern design, but these are rugged, durable, fantastic user knives that are heavy use knives as well as good just plopping around town. And I bought this one right here, brand new, $54. Just bought it a couple weeks ago, and it is a high value knife because the value of this knife, the capabilities, the durability, the ruggedness of this knife, the proven track history of this knife far exceeds that $54 price. So it's not only a bargain at what I bought it for, which it was, by the way. I got money off the going price, but it is also a great value for what you're getting. And the problem is, other people will look at this knife, and some guys may understand the worth of these knives and recognize it, but they may not like brass, for instance, or they may not like having two brass bolsters. They may like to have a bare head end on their knife, maybe a lanyard hole on their knife, and so they don't place the same value on this knife that I do. And so that's one thing you have to understand when you start shopping for knives also, that not everybody's going to see things the same way that you do. Lastly, valuation is a completely subjective, arbitrary assignment that we humans put on different things. So a good example of this is this diamond. And so these diamonds are just a rock that's pulled out of the ground. They do have some industrial uses. They're very hard, but by and large, the value of these things are set by the extreme popularity around the world of diamonds. It's like everybody loves diamonds. So when you look at another gemstone, this is an opal. I love opals, and opals carry with it a pretty good valuation, but it's not as high as a diamond. And there are people who just don't like opals at all. And so to those people, no value is good enough for the opal. On the extreme, these are really pretty rocks pulled out of the ground just like a diamond or an opal, but these rocks are virtually worthless. So they do contain some value. This one, malachite, is used in jewelry, very popular, but it's nowhere near the valuations of a gemstone like a sapphire or an emerald. And so it's practically worthless. They're all stones, though. They all come out of the ground. And so the valuation comes from our desire to have it. And so those are foundational things you need to remember as you make choices when you buy your knives. All right, so before we get into this, I'm going to just say something really quickly. As you are looking for knives and buying knives, if you collect, or whether you need a knife just for on the job or out in the field, whatever, with all these principles in mind, the most important one is that you like the knife, okay? So the worst thing you could do is buy the Spyderco because everybody else on the job buys the Spyderco. And this is the only Spyderco I have. I don't really like the leaf style blade on these. Now, I understand and respect that there are fantastic knives, and I believe they are. And I have one. I may buy another one, but I don't have a lot of them because I don't really like them. Okay, so buy what you like and don't worry about what other people are thinking. That's a terrible way to buy a knife. And so let's get into how to decide whether a knife is a good value or not. So when we go looking for a knife, we're looking for a specific purpose. You should buy the knife that's going to fit that specific need. If all you need is a light knife to carry around town and open some letters up and maybe cut some string, you don't need a buck 110, even though you may really like this knife, right? And so it's important that you get the knife that's suited for the purpose, and that is going to be important because you start carrying that buck 110 around in your pocket, you're going to get tired of it really quick. It's a heavy knife. It bangs around. It hits things. And, that's why you got to choose the knife based upon the task that you're going to use it for. And so one of the easiest ways to figure out valuations on knives is divide them into classes by price. Okay, so if you look up here, all of these knives right here, not this one, this one right here, all these knives right here are kind of a middle of the road valuation in the $100 to $150 range. Right there. And so when you classify knives like that by their price, it's a lot easier to determine what is a good value, rather than bouncing around and looking at this knife because you like the style, and then looking at this knife because you like the style, and looking at this knife because you like the style. And so if you'll just clump them together in classes by price, it's a lot easier to determine what is a good value. So let's just look at this example for a minute. When you look at these knives, there's some differences. They're basically the same size. The Spyderco is the largest, but they're really close together in size. But they also all have super steels in them, even though the super steels are different in each one. So I'm not going to get into super steels. It's too complicated of a subject. Let's just say if a knife has a super steel on it, it's going to achieve what you want it to achieve, which is a long-lasting edge. They have great edge retention on them. Okay, so they all have super steels, but if you'll notice, it looks like their scale material, their handle material is different. So this is a Deca right here, very lightweight knife, and it has an FRN handle, fiber reinforced nylon, very old type of handle material in the knife. It's just fine. It'll hold up just fine. It's just an old type of material. On this Buck Sprint Pro right here, you have micarta. Micarta is also an old material, but they just started using it in knives around the new millennium predominantly. It got popular around 2010, I think, and it's a very durable, tough handle material that has a lot of attributes that knife lovers like. Same thing with this is a Tenacious, a lot of different brands of Spyderco, but this is a Tenacious. It has an FRN handle, and but this FRN handle, which by the way, these tend to be pretty slippery. You could just guide your finger over this, and they've put in some milling here to make it grippy, but it's still kind of slippery. Over here, Spyderco's done a great job with these grips that they put on here. They are very grippy, that your fingers just sink in, and it kind of negates the slipperiness of the handle material itself. They also put liners in here that stiffen the material and make it a lot more rugged knife. These are great EDC knives, by the way. But when I'm evaluating these knives, I'm going to look at that and look at the price. This knife retails for $150, this one $140, this one I think it's around $120, maybe around $140. They're all kind of similar. So if I can get one of these knives for less than that price, it's a good value for me. But personally, for me, the handle material on this knife right here, it is superior to the handle material on the other two knives that are similarly priced. And so This has a super steel. It's S30. It's just fine super steel. I've got a bunch of knives and used them for a long time, had no problem with it. To me, this is a high value knife. I think that's apparent if you look at these other two knives. A lot of people would think these two knives are better than this buck knife. I don't see that. I've got all three. I use all three. I don't see that there's a whole lot of difference in these knives. This Deca is a lot smoother. You have a different deployment method in every one of these knives. That may make a difference to you. But the bottom line is that to me, this is just better materials for the price. And actually, I got this on sale for $123, so it was a no-brainer for me. But the value of this really becomes apparent when you match it up to higher end knives in that 200, 180 to 250 bracket. Many of those knives in that bracket have like G10 grips, FRN grips, and they're still going for $240. And here you have something that has a nice looking burlap micarta, strong handle material. It has a lot of advantages. It's really grippy, especially when it's slick. And you have a good steel in this knife. There is a good smooth action on this knife, and compared to a $240 knife, this is a real value. So you're getting a lot of the same things that you get in this $240 knives at $123. It also appears to be a good value when you match it up to lesser knives, into a $50 knife range here. So for a little bit more money, you get a whole lot more bang for your buck. And so that's how I place evaluations on knives and decide which are really high value knives and which are not. By the way, I think this is a high value knife if you match it up against knives that are in that $250 range. This is a fantastic knife, this Deca, by the way, and carry this a lot. I like it. So let's look at the low end now. So on the low end, you're going to be doing a lot of the same thinking. You're going to be looking at what materials are in this knife. This is a $24 knife. It's a great EDC knife. These are great knives for around town, doing light EDC to medium EDC tasks. It has an 8CR13 MOV stainless steel. That is a budget steel, but completely adequate steel. This has G10 liners in it, and for a budget knife, that's a bonus because G10 is a pretty strong handle material. It also has carbon fiber inlay, and so you have some nice aesthetics going on here in this knife. Let's choose another one. Here's another Kershaw right here. Same thing, it's in the $20 price range. Again, you get G10 with carbon fiber inlay, and I believe this is D2. So if you match these two knives up right here, this is a better blade steel. A lot of people will consider D2 an upgrade over 8CR13. I think it's marginally a better steel. It's not a stainless steel though, so if you were looking for stainless steel, then this would be the choice. If you were looking for upgraded steel, the D2 might be the choice for you. But if you look in the same low budget range at this knife right here, this is a Vostead knife, and there's several different deployment methods on this knife. You've got an axis lock here, and this thing just is one of the smoothest knives I've ever seen. So I'm not doing anything here, and it just drops. Just super smooth action for $50. You've got a nice anodized stud on here, anodization on your backspacer, and a really well built knife with good action. And the one thing about this is you have a kind of a different blade geometry going on here. But I think this would be a tremendous slicer and work really well in the EDC role. And when you put it up against this, it has 14C28 steel in it. You see right there. That's a really tough steel. It has a longer edge retention than D2. It is stainless, so if you don't like stainless, maybe this isn't for you. But if you don't care, for the price, for $20 more, this seems like a lot better knife than this Kershaw Natrix to me. Yeah, even though these are really good knives, I've got this this is the Natrix, and then I've got the extra large Natrix. And so those are the things I'm looking at. I'm evaluating these. There's no way to get around research, and all you got to do, if you're not familiar with these steels and handle materials, is just Google them. Google 8CR13 review, and you're going to get an explanation of the benefits and the detractors on this steel. You look at D2, same thing. You look at 14C28, same thing. And you can figure out pretty quickly. It's not rocket science, and it's not complicated in these reviews. And you'll be able to find the knife and the blade steel that fits what you're looking for. Sometimes the valuation on these knives is just off the chart. So if you're looking like on the slip joint side, all of these are good knives that I have up here. This is a new one, Bear & Son, and it's just fantastically made and just a super value because I got this for $38. And so typically, you're going to be paying anywhere from $60 to $80 for a knife this size with the quality level that's in this knife. A good example is this case. It's an $80 knife. It's a Barlow, much smaller knife than this knife. And this would really, in my opinion, be a better EDC knife than the Barlow. And, Barlow fans don't throw tomatoes at the screen. But I think, that is just because of its size, it'd be a good EDC knife. This knife right here is fantastic, but, it's in that $200 range. Sometimes you can get them for a lot less, but that's pretty much what you can get them for. This knife was $48. It's an Italian-made knife. It's a slip joint. It is a modern slip joint, so it has a modern attaching hardware. If you really like that traditional look and feel, just the knowledge of carrying around something like your granddad carried around, this wouldn't be appropriate for you. But if you're just looking for a good EDC knife and you want to use a slip joint, this is a slam dunk. So the action on this thing is solid, strong, fantastic. It has big, thick micarta handles and liners on top of that. So this is a tremendously strong knife. It's in that kind of pattern like a sod buster that is very popular for EDC. And when you look at the back spring, it's absolutely huge, as is the blade stock on this knife. Look at how strong this knife is. Very strong point on this knife. Very nice blade design, EDC design on this knife. It's flat ground. It's going to be slicey. And look at the difference between this Bear & Son, the geometry on this Bear & Son and this one. It's almost twice as large. $38, $40, $48 for a little bit more. This is a lot lighter knife than this knife right here. And so these are tremendous values for the price. And this is a knife that's going to last you a long time, and it has a lot of advantages. If you get it dirty, you just pop out the screws. You can take it apart. If something breaks, you can fix it easily. If something breaks on this knife, it's going to be a lot harder to fix. And a lot of guys just end up trashing these because they don't want to go through all that they have to go through to big scales or bolsters or blades on a knife like this. So tremendous value right there. And that's how you determine it, by looking at the options in a given price range. But when you look at more expensive knives, oftentimes you'll find that these high value knives will become more valuable. Because when you look at more expensive options than this, this is pretty much, a good option. So why are you paying another $100 for a different kind of knife, like a Boker, for instance, when you can have this really nice $48 knife? All right, that's pretty much the process I go through to look at these knives and decide which are good values and which are not. I hope that helped you out. I don't think it was too confusing, but if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. Remember the live show coming up, and I really appreciate all your all support. Thanks again.